Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Media Boss Live. I know it's been a minute. You haven't seen me in a minute doing these live streams, but I'm back. I'm back. I'm here today, and welcome. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews of Media Boss Pro, and I want to welcome you. Today, we're going to talk about how to start a successful podcast. That's right, how to start a successful podcast. I don't plan on taking a lot of your time, but I want to start making sure you see me more, and I start doing more of these live streams. We're going to have guests sometimes, as you know, we had before. If you look back on our streams before through on YouTube, if you look on Facebook, LinkedIn, you'll see some of the lives that we've done before. We had some fantastic guests who gave some incredible content. I know a lot of you have commented on it. And that reminds me, while you're here today, make comments, ask questions. We may not get to them live, but I will respond to them after the live stream is over. I want to make sure you guys are versed, and I want to make sure you all know about some things we have upcoming to help educate you more, not on just podcasting, but other things that we do. For those of you who don't know about Media Boss Pro, what Media Boss Pro does is we primarily focus on turning retired CEOs and C-suite executives into industry icons by leveraging media to make it so their message and their mission can stay relevant, can stay out there, and is not tied necessarily to a corporation, but it can get to the masses, to people like you and me out there who need to hear and learn from these great people. So that's what we do. But I'm doing this today for everyone, not just retired CEOs, not just C-suite executives. I want to make sure you guys learn about media. So we not just at Media Boss Pro, we don't just focus on podcasting. We don't just focus on one area. We focus on books, magazines, blogs. We focus on film, television, live stream, as you see here. We focus on social media. We focus on various forms of media because guess what? The people that you serve pay attention to various forms of media. So we want to make sure that you all are getting to those people. So that's what we want to do at Media Boss Pros, make sure you are getting to those people. So that's what we want to focus on today. Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about is, as I said, we're talking about starting a successful podcast. I want to get to something before we even get into it. And those are because there's something you need to really do if you're going to start a successful podcast. And that is get off your butt and start a podcast. Now you're saying, whoa, why is he yelling at me? Because you have probably, if you're like most people, been saying you're going to start a podcast, been thinking about starting a podcast. Just start it. Just start it. I have news for you. You ready? It's not going to be perfect. I know. That's a clutch the pearls one for a lot of you right there. It's not going to be perfect. But here's something that's encouraging. Doesn't have to be. No one's expecting you to be perfect. Your audience will be attracted to you. You're not perfect. Guess what? They're not perfect either. So get your podcast started, guys. Stop procrastinating. Stop giving yourself every excuse in the world and stop taking your excuses. Get your podcast started. That's the biggest thing out there. Everyone, they have all these roadblocks in their head, all this anxiety that's built up over starting their podcast. And they buy into it. They buy into that anxiety and they start telling themselves, well, I can't start it now because I don't have this. I can't do it now because this isn't ready. I don't know if I should do it now because I don't know if this will happen. Or I can't do it now because if I do, this will happen. Stop worrying about that stuff because it has nothing to do with you starting a successful podcast. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to delve into it a little bit. And we're going to go over a number of things as to starting a podcast, or some things that you need to be aware of. And, like I said, I'm Dr. Barrett Matthews of Media Boss Pro. So you've seen that now. You can reach me on Instagram at podcast_nation. You can also reach me on Facebook and Media Boss Club. I am also on LinkedIn. And some of you are watching me on all these platforms right now, so you can reach me there. But I definitely want you to leave comments. And here's one thing I want you to leave right now. Let me know. If you have a podcast, say, I have a podcast. If you don't have a podcast but want to start a podcast, say, I want to start a podcast. If you're considering, say, I'm considering starting a podcast. But one thing I can say for certain is that all of you should have one. And before I get going, I want to put one myth out there that I don't know if it's a myth, but I want to just dispel something that I hear people saying all the time. Well, aren't podcasts saturated now? Aren't there too many podcasts? How many of you have heard that one before? If you heard that one, put that in the comments. You heard that before. Well, I put it to you like this. Podcast is just another form of media. So let me ask you this. Books are a form of media. Are there too many books? Would you like people to stop writing books because there are too many books out there? How many of you watch television? Are there too many TV shows? Are there too many movies? Are there too many magazines? These are all media. The reason you say that podcasts are saturated at too many is because you still have that anxiety of you doing your own podcast. There weren't too many podcasts when you weren't thinking about doing it yourself. But now that you have to think about doing it yourself, all of a sudden it becomes too many. Get that out of your head. Get that out of your head, please. So we want to make sure that we get rid of that, okay? Like I said, get it out of your head. So now let's move on to something else here. And I'm trying to get something off the screen here, but don't worry about that right now. So anyway, I want to make sure that you guys are aware of what's going to be necessary for you to get this podcast going successfully. So one, you have to make sure that you are someone that people want to listen to. And I know that may sound harsh to some of you, but it's true. You have to make sure that someone would actually want to listen to you. And why do I say it like that? Because you have to be relatable. That's the best way I can put it. You have to be relatable. Because people need to know that you're someone that they can pay attention to. People need to know that you are someone that they can actually be interested in. Because if they're not interested in you, then you're talking to yourself. Now, does that mean you're going to get everybody? No. Does it mean you should get everybody? No, you shouldn't get everybody. Because you're going to get your audience, as I said earlier. You're going to attract your audience. But you should make sure that when you do get that audience, that they can relate to you. Then what I'm saying is like this. It doesn't mean that you have to be all jumping for joy, happy, friendly. Sometimes you can be harsh. Sometimes you can be stern. Sometimes you can be professional. Whatever your audience is looking for, you have to be relatable to your audience. Now, you're saying, well, how do I know that? Because you know what you're interested in. You know, for instance, if I'm talking about quantum physics, chances are I'm not going to be a woo-woo type of person going, oh God, the birds are so lovely out there and so forth. That's not people. People who talk quantum physics usually don't talk in that tone. You know who the people who listen to quantum physics, who study quantum physics, you know what they're interested in. So what I say to you is find those people, find out what they're interested in, and learn from them. Yes, learn from them. How about that? Isn't that novel? Learn from those people. It's okay. You can do that, and then you can actually mimic that style because that's what they are interested in. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So we're gonna go on here now. So be relatable, and understand you have to study people sometimes to do that. So you have to learn from the people around you. When I'm saying that is be flexible. Learn. There are going to be different ideas about your podcast that you may want to put together. And when I'm saying that, I'm saying that there are no cookie cutter podcasts. I used to do a podcast called The Productive Podcaster. And a good friend of mine told me, he said, you ought to do a podcast about people who do podcasts. And that's why I put together the Productive Podcast. It was a good podcast. We had fun with that. And what we did is we interviewed people who had podcasts. And the premise was to show people that you can do your podcast on anything. You can do your podcast in any style. You can do your podcast differently than everyone else. Why? Because there is no cookie cutter way to do a podcast. And I guess the best way I can describe that is looking at television. When you look at television, there are sitcoms, there are drama shows, there are interview shows, there are shows with just one person talking, there are shows that have a drama and comedy mixed together. There are reality TV shows. There are game shows. There's so many different ways to do it. There are musical, variety shows, all that. Podcasts can be the same way. You don't have to put yourself in a hole and say, this is where I have to be. You can change. You can listen to different ideas and learn from different people. But you have to be open to that. So my point to you is to be flexible enough to say, you know what? I can change. I can be different. I don't have to go do everything everyone else is doing. As a matter of fact, I suggest doing something a little different. I suggest listening to different ideas. So one way to do that is to find out what your audience wants. Find out what people would love to see or listen to in a podcast. And try to help give them what they want, because I mean, they're your audience. So you want to help give them what they want so that they can actually be more interested in what you're giving them. Don't be afraid to do that. Open yourself up to different ideas. It's all right to do that. It's definitely all right to do that. And just find out how we can talk about that further. If you want to talk with me further, you can go to my website, MediaBossPro.com. You can schedule a time and you can talk to me, and we can go into that as well. Now, one thing that I encourage, and just for those of you who don't know, I produce and distribute podcasts for business owners. So there are people who come to me, they want me to produce their podcast for them. They want me to edit it for them. They want me to add the music for them. They want me to distribute it to all these podcast platforms, including YouTube. Because for those of you who don't know, YouTube is a podcast platform now. So, but yes, they want me to put their podcast on all these things. So, what am I getting to? I'm getting to the fact that these people come to me because they trust me to do this for them. Now, one of the things that I tell them all, and it's one of the biggest keys in doing a podcast, release episodes on a consistent basis. That's right. Be consistent with it. Because I'm going to use the TV reference again. How many of you have a favorite TV show? As a matter of fact, if you have a favorite TV show, put that in the chat. Say, my favorite TV show is, and just give me your favorite TV show. Here's the thing about TV shows. People who started putting TV shows out years ago, they figured out one thing. People like consistency. They like consistency. So if you want to have a successful podcast, you better be consistent. Now, I know there are some people who may put out a podcast every couple of months. And I'm telling you, that's not consistent. It's not consistent. I honestly don't even like the ones that come out once a month. My preference is one per week. My preference, just like your favorite TV show, right? My preference is one per week. And why do I say that? Because if you're doing it one per week, people can know, okay, I got to be ready this time, be ready that time, because it's going to come in. And you can accumulate more episodes quicker if you do it that way. You can accumulate more episodes if you do it that way. So if you do it weekly, you can have an audience growing, and they're looking for those every week. I'm going to be honest with you. If it goes longer than that, people may lose interest. They may forget that you have a podcast. They may forget that you have one. So this is why I emphasize you to be consistent in putting out your episodes. And of course, you want to engage with your audience too. Now, how do you engage with your audience? That's something we can talk about later. I do a challenge, and I'll talk to you about my challenge in a little bit. As a matter of fact, I'll mention it a little bit right now. What I do is I put together a Make Money from Media Challenge. It's a Make Money from Media Challenge. And the whole premise of the challenge is to get you to understand that media is here. Media is not going anywhere. you have to learn about media and how to use it in your business. So on July 22nd through the 26th from 6 to 8 p.m., you can sign up for the Make Money from Media Challenge. You can sign up as general admission or VIP. I recommend VIP because you get to get all your questions answered in the VIP. We treat them a little different because they're VIP, but there are a lot of perks and special offers for everyone who signs up for it. And one of our two of our VIPs are going to get an iPad Mini as a gift. So you get a chance to do that. So you sign up, you get a chance to get that, and that's the Make Money from Media Challenge coming up July 22nd through the 26th. I look forward to seeing you all there. We'll talk about that later. Now, back to creating your podcast. Because we're going to talk about in the challenge, we'll be talking about the podcast, ins and outs of it, how to make money with it. We'll be talking about other media as well. We're going to talk about that a little bit further. So, like I said earlier, there are different ways to do your podcast, meaning that just like TV shows, there are different styles, different rundowns, how you can set up your podcast. If you want to do one by yourself as a talking head, or if you want to do one where you come on and have some audio or some video and show that. If you want to do one where there are literally podcasts that do theatrical productions. There are soap opera podcasts. Some of you already know that. There are musical, like as in musicals that you would see on Broadway. There are podcasts. There are production quality like that. And then there are those that many of you have heard, the ones where people are interviewing other people. So I want to talk about that for a second. If you're going to do an interview style podcast, which I think is a great way to do a podcast, let me tell you one reason why that's so great. You don't have to do all the talking. Yeah, I know that sounds like, wow, what, really, Barrett? Yes. Most people don't want to do all the talking in their podcast. So if you have a guest on your podcast, they can do a lot of the talking, especially if you have a good guest, because you can pose a question to them and let them answer the question. Now, I do say that, meaning that you have to let them answer the question. Don't just talk over them. Let them answer the question. And if you have a good guest, they will take that question and run it into an answer that leads you to more questions. Isn't that great? So that way, but you have to listen. You listen to them, and it can lead you into more questions. Now, one thing about having guests, this is the biggest issue I think a lot of podcasters run into who have guests. Make sure your guests are prepared. Make sure your guests are prepared. What do you mean by that, Barrett? Make sure they're prepared. It's their subject matter. They should know their subject matter. Okay, let's talk about that. One, they should know their subject matter, but they should also be ready to answer questions and elaborate. You don't want to say, hey, so did you enjoy writing that book? And then have them go, yes. Well, no, you want them to talk further. You want them to elaborate on that answer. Go a little deeper into it. Talk about why they enjoyed writing the book. You also want to make sure that they show up early. Not on time, early for the podcast. It is best, I repeat, it is best that you tell them what time to show up so you can test out the audio and video. Some of you are like, but I don't want to do video. Get over it. Do video. And why am I saying that? Because video is king, first of all. You need to do audio and video podcasts. Here's the main reason why. People that listen to audio podcasts are usually not the same people who watch video podcasts. People who watch video podcasts are usually not the same people who listen to audio podcasts. So what does that mean for you? It means that you capture two separate audiences. Now you feeling me? You can capture two separate audiences all at one time. And those audiences want to know the same thing that the other audience wants to know. So you can capture them both at the same time. So that's why you should do audio and video for your podcast. So that means have your guests be prepared to be on camera. Meaning, make sure that they are well coiffed, shall we say, for being on camera. Make sure that their background is correct. Make sure that they are well lit. Oh, that's the most important one. Make sure they are well lit on camera. Make sure that they have good sound quality coming from their microphone. And this one, it may sound obvious, but I tell you, it's something that gets in the way a lot of times. Make sure they're in a quiet place. I repeat, make sure they're in a quiet place. There is nothing more frustrating than having your podcast happening while you're being interrupted by someone running through the house, children or spouse or grandparents or somebody yelling something to the person or interrupting the person while they're talking in the middle of your interview. I know life happens. Trust me, I get it. But there are ways you can prepare for that. And you want to just make sure that your guests are prepared for those things because these things happen. And now that's something more that you have to edit in your podcast. Now, it's something that you can prepare for by having your guests prepare for. Also, have your guests be prepared to market the podcast. Now, if your podcast is coming out like, if it's a live stream like this and then it's going out as a podcast, have them promote it beforehand. If it's a recording, like many of them are, and then it's going to go out later, have them promote it later. And you can help them by giving them marketing materials. Give them shorts to put out. Give them quote cards. Give them a banner or something with their picture on it, their name on it, so you can they can promote it for you to their audience. To their audience. Which leads me to the next thing that you want to do if you want to create a successful podcast. A lot of people worry because I don't know if anyone's going to listen to me. I don't have that big of a audience that are following me. Okay, first of all, so what? So what? You'll develop that. You'll develop that. It takes time. Don't think it's going to be overnight. And I think that's something I probably should have led off with too. A successful podcast, just like anything in life, doesn't happen overnight. So get that out of your head. Just get that out of your head. Enjoy what you're doing. Just enjoy the process, man. Enjoy creating something that you can put out there every week for people. And one way to help you build that audience for your podcast is to use other people's audiences. Yeah. How about that? Use other people's audiences. So when you have a guest on your podcast, promote your guest, but have your guest promote your podcast. Make sure that their audience knows what's going on. And this is so important, especially for those of you who have a business, but whether you have a business or not, have a way for these guests to promote the podcast and have a way for that audience, that new audience that you don't know, to reach out to you, to get your social media content, so you can get them on an email list. Have a gift or something. Have a way for them to contact you and have a way for you to get their information. One of my friends, he taught me something years ago about marketing to your audiences. He said you have to think about I am. First, you get their information. Second, you get them to take an action. Third, you ask for money for something. Many of you go for, I gotta make a sale. I gotta make a sale. No, first get the information, then get them to take an action. Third, money. If you get that out of order, my friend says you will mess up 80% of your profits. So make sure you get that in the right order. Get the information. So find a way. If you're gonna use other people's audiences, you need to capitalize on that. Don't just have their audience just for the audience sake. Get the audience so that they can become your audience. That's what you want to do. Let me tell you a story. It's funny because talk about that same friend who taught me I am. He was doing speaking engagements years ago. He and a partner, they were doing speaking engagements. They had these big crowds of people showing up, and I was, of course, in the crowd. But I was also helping them set up. I was also volunteering to help them, teaching them, well, not teaching them, but teaching their people some things. And I was asking myself, I'm a good speaker. How come they didn't ask me to come speak? And I would ask myself that a few times, and then I said, you know what, Barrett, why don't you create your own platform to speak on? Get your own audience. And I thought about it, and I said, that's a great idea, but I don't have that big of an audience right now. So what do you do? So what I did was I contacted those same people who were doing those events, and I said, hey, I'm doing an event, and I want you to be guests to speak on my platform. And they said yes. And guess what? Just like I told you, they brought their audience. So now two things happen. One, their audience, some of them helped become my audience. But another thing is that their audience now realize, okay, he has something to offer as well. But then a third thing happened. A third thing happened. Can you guess what it is? Yes. Those same two people who were putting on those events realized, wait a minute, Barrett can speak. We need to include Barrett on some things. But I didn't sit there wallowing in self-pity, wondering why they didn't pick me. I created my own. So what I'm telling you to do, a podcast is a way for you to create your own platform. Use other people's audiences to create your own. What'll happen is a lot of times in podcasting, it's reciprocated. When you have these people become a guest on your show, if they like you, guess what they may do? You got it. They'll ask you to be a guest on theirs. It happens all the time. I can't tell you how many times that has happened for me. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. And keep in mind, like I said, audio and video. You can capture their audio audience and capture their video audience. You can capture their social media audience. It's just a great way to do it. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. Now, speaking of social media, you want to edit your podcast into shorts, short form video, and you can engage with the audience that way. A lot of people watch YouTube videos for the shorts. They watch Instagram for the reels. You probably do it yourself. And other platforms, they watch those shorts, TikTok as well. If you create short form videos, it gets interest, it gets attention. Then it can lead them to the long form video, such as the 20, 30, 60-minute podcast you have. But you want to whet their appetite, so to speak. You want to get them interested in what you're doing by having that show up on the podcast, or having on your social media rather. Make sure that they know that these things are out there. You want to get them interested in what the subject matter is, your guest, so forth and so on. Because sometimes you may have a guest on your podcast, or sometimes you just may have a topic you're talking about. And you put that in a short and put it on social media. And they, oh, I want to learn more. Well, now they want to click in. Oh, I like that person. I didn't know they were on this podcast. Let me go check them out. I do it all the time. So I'm telling you, it works. It works, but you have to make sure you're putting yourself out there. Now, one thing I want to emphasize to people, and I'm not going to really dig into this a lot, but you want to select a great niche, a great area of focus that will, it's something, first of all, it's something that you like, something you can relate to, something you can talk about, something that aligns with you, your interests. Don't just talk about something because you think people may be interested in it. I'll give you an example. I talk about media. Why? I was a media major in college. I worked professionally in the media for years. It's something that I love doing. It's something I do almost naturally. And I like talking about it. I like seeing some things that are happening in the media. There are certain things I don't like, and I would like to be part of changing those. But talking about it is easy for me. You should do the same thing. Make sure that whatever your subject matter is, that it's something that aligns with you. Something that aligns with what you're trying to get across to people. Because you're going to attract the people that also fit in that alignment. So be careful what you're selecting. Also, select something that you can talk about, but also that you're not the only one in the world that is interested in it. And I know that's rare. That's very rare. But you want to make sure that you can talk about something that other people will be interested in. It doesn't have to be thousands and thousands and millions of people. Just make sure that some people are interested in it. I want to get one other thing out of the way for people, because I've seen a lot of people, they get down on themselves when they start a podcast because their listenership or their viewerships or their downloads are low. And I only had 100 people listen to that episode. Now, I want to ask you a question. I really want to ask you this, and I want you to think about this. Let's say if someone asks you to speak live at an event. And I know that's an honor to be able to speak live at an event. And you said, well, how many people are you expecting? And they said, probably about 100 people. You go, okay, wow, okay, cool, that's good. Why would that excite you, but you don't get excited about having 100 people watch your podcast or listen to your podcast? It's still 100 people. Don't get blown away by the numbers you see from someone like a Joe Rogan. You are not Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was a celebrity before he started his podcast. Joe Rogan also has the backing of millions of dollars behind him to promote his podcast and to push people towards what he is doing. You are not Joe Rogan, so stop comparing yourself. You are you. You are good enough to do what you're doing right now, and you'll find the audience that you're supposed to get. Which brings me to the next matter. Promote your podcast. Promote it. Promote the podcast. Put it out there. Let people know that you have a podcast. One of the things I hear I just ran into a high school friend of mine last week. Hadn't seen him in years. And he said, you have a podcast, right? I said, yes. He said, hey, I need to listen to your podcast. And he reached out to me last night. And guess what he asked for? Link to my podcast. He said he's going to listen to it because he wants to. See, these are things that you want to be known for having. You want to be known for having a podcast. You want to create a buzz around your podcast. Speaking of which, I recently just had BuzzFeed write something about me knowing that I have a podcast. You also want to get other people talking about your podcast, talking about what you're doing out there. So that means promote it on your social media. Engage with people. There's nothing that drives me crazier than having people who have a podcast or some type of media have people commenting on their posts, have people reaching out to them, and they don't respond. That's crazy. If someone is taking the time to comment to you, I don't care if it's positive or negative, reach back out to them. All publicity is good publicity. Let people know that you have a podcast. Let people know you care. Do a newsletter. Do a newsletter. Do a blog or something. Let people know that you care about them. Send something to your email list. Let them know you have a podcast and encourage them to listen to it. And like I said, have your guests do it too. Don't be afraid to spend money running ads too to promote your podcast. Please don't do that. Don't have a problem doing that. Now, you want to keep the length of your podcast. How do I say this? Because people, I hear different schools of thoughts on this, but I'm going to tell you mine. I think, this is just me, unless you are someone who has an incredible audience, I repeat, unless you are someone that has an incredible audience that follows everything that you do, I suggest that you keep the length of your podcast between 25 and 40 minutes, not an hour. Not an hour and a half. And I know some of you are thinking, but yeah, I have some great content. Then make it 2 episodes. Make it 2 episodes. It's okay with doing that, to edit it and do that. Now, I know some of you are saying, Barrett, that's what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about what can I use to edit my podcast. Well, I will say to you, like I said earlier, attend the Make Money from Media Challenge. We'll talk about that there. We'll talk about there. What types of softwares you can use to edit your podcast, how you can get that going. Is July 22nd through the 26th, 6 to 8 p.m. You can register now. Just go to makemoneyfrommediachallenge.com. If you don't want to do it right now, you can go ahead and write down the link and then go after this broadcast and register for the event VIP, or you can come in as general admission as well. But I want to make sure that you guys get there, because you're going to learn more about how to market the podcast, how to get things out, how to edit it, how to get other video going, streaming video, how to do webinars on how to get a film going and why you should be doing a film, why you should be doing Roku TV, why you should be writing a book, and how all of these things can make you money. Yeah, the Make Money from Media Challenge is coming up July 22nd through the 26th. Make Money from MediaChallenge.com. Make sure you guys are in the place, okay? It's a virtual event, though, just so you know. So we talked about promoting your podcast. And we talked about keeping the length of your podcast as to where people can keep the attention. People today have the attention span of a goldfish. I think we all can agree on that. People do not have long attention spans. I know people that do 10-minute podcasts. I know people that do 3-minute podcasts. That's fine. I'm just telling you that if you're going to do a lot of content, don't make it an hour. I had a guy, this was years ago, he wanted me to produce his podcast. He sent me 2 hours of him talking. And I asked myself, so you want to break this up into, several episodes? He goes, no, I want that to be one episode. And I had to be honest with him. I said, look, let me just tell you something. Nobody wants to hear you talk for 2 hours but you. Nobody. Think about it. You go to church, you don't want to hear the pastor talk for 2 hours. Nobody wants to hear you talk for 2 hours but you. They're going to tune out. They're going to tune out. And you don't want that happening. You don't want that happening. So please make sure that your time is concise. Make sure that you do that. Make sure your time is concise on that. Now, one of the last things I want to talk about here is your quality of your podcast. Prioritize that. Make it a big deal to have your quality good. Now, what do I mean by make your quality good? Make it so that people can hear you. Make it so your image is not blurry. Make it so your guests look good on screen as well as you. Make it so your video shorts come across looking like they were done by someone that knows what they're doing. Make it so your promotion materials, your graphic for your podcast looks clean. These are things people will relate to. These are things people are going to buy into. These are things that people will want to know more about. If you can do these things, you can have a successful podcast. All of you can. But I need you to understand something about having a successful podcast. It is not an overnight success. I know you said, Barrett, you already said that, but I'm saying it again. Because some people hear what they want to hear, and I want to emphasize that. And why do I bring that up? Most people do a podcast. You know how many episodes they do? 4. They do a month's worth of podcasts. And then they're looking for money all of a sudden. And they're wondering, why isn't the money coming in? Oh, I quit. You're probably sitting there going, wow, what, really? Yeah, that happens. Some of you may be saying, well, yeah, that's kind of what I did. And that's why you're here today. So I want to tell you, it's not an overnight thing. And I'll be honest with you, you should be talking about something on your podcast that's fun for you, that you enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy your podcast, it becomes work. And it shouldn't be work. It should be something fun that you do, something fun that you could talk about all the time. When you can do that, it's simple. And the success will come. Success comes in different ways. Some of you may be looking for money, which is why you have to attend to make money from Media Challenge. Some of you may be looking to grow your voice, to get more people interested in what you're doing out there so that they can become clients later. Success looks different to different people. But the one thing I want you to do is make sure that you are doing it consistently, doing it clean, make sure your edits are good, doing it with great content, having people on there that really can add value to someone. If you can do those things, I promise you, you can have success in your podcast. But if you don't do it, then you're gonna be wondering, what's the problem? Why am I having difficulty? So once again, I want to emphasize to you, July 22nd through the 26th, to make money from Media Challenge. To make money from Media Challenge from 6 to 8 p.m. 5-day challenge. It's a 5-day challenge. You're getting all 5 days for only $97 in general admission. And only $297 for VIP. All 5 days. And VIP, what do you get? You get an extra hour. So general admission from 7 to 8, Monday through Friday. VIP from 6 to 8, Monday through Friday. And VIPs, you get to ask certain questions the general admission does not get to ask. Also, VIP, you get a chance to win an iPad, and there are some trips they're going to be giving out. There are some vacation trips to the Caribbean that will be given out at the challenge as well. So I want to encourage you guys, if you want to learn more about not just podcasting, if you want to learn more about how to use social media, if you want to learn about how to use streaming video, if you want to learn about Roku TV, if you want to learn about documentary film or writing books and how to make money. And I'm not talking about the traditional ways everyone tells you about how to make money with these things. I want to dig a little deeper in this challenge. And why do I call it a challenge? Because every day you're going to have an assignment, a challenge. Are you up to it? Are you up to it? Go to MakeMoneyFromMediaChallenge.com. Get registered for the challenge, and I want to see you guys there. I really do. I want to see you guys at the challenge, and I want to make sure that the world can know that you're ready to not just start your podcast, but to get your message out there so other people can learn from you, other people can pick up something from you and grow from the information that you have. So go to MakeMoneyFromMediaChallenge.com. Get registered today for that. And everybody, if you are interested in starting a podcast, if you're interested in starting a podcast, I mean this. If you're interested in starting a podcast, what I'm encouraging you guys to do is to stop waiting. Stop waiting. I want you guys to go to my site right now. And I know my website is catered to my target audience, which is the retired CEOs and the C-suite execs, but I still want you guys to go to my website right now, which is Media Boss Pro. And I want you, MediaBossPro.com, I want you to go ahead and click the schedule appointment area. I want to make sure that you guys can schedule an appointment with me so that we can talk about getting your podcast started. And if you're interested in doing one, just put in the chat, I want to start a podcast. Help me, something. Put something in there so I know that you are interested in starting your own podcast. Stop procrastinating. I want to ask you something right now. And you can answer this in the chat if you want to. Do you feel that you have something to offer the world that they're not getting from you just yet? Do you feel that you have something to offer the world that they're not getting from you just yet? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then my next question to you is this. How long are you going to make them wait? How long? How long are you going to make the world wait for what you have to answer? I want you right now to schedule a time with me at MediaBossPro.com. MediaBossPro.com. Let's talk about it. Let's find out. I don't do hard sales or anything. I want to find out what it is that's making you tick. What it is that's making you hold back from the world with all the gifts that God gave you. Why are you not sharing that with them? We want to make this happen for you, man. At Media Boss Pro, we want to make it happen. We want to get your message out there. You are supposed to be sharing this with everybody. I'm encouraging you to pick up that baton and get going with it, man. Get running because you need to share this with the world. You have great content inside your head that the world needs to know. The content I have in my head is not the content you have in your head. It's not the content that the next person has. It's unique to you. So I'm going to encourage you to let's get this podcast going. If you want to learn how to make money with it, make sure you come to the challenge, the Make Money from Media Challenge. I'm looking forward to seeing your comments. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys at the Make Money from Media Challenge. I'm looking forward to working with some of you who want to get a podcast going. I'm excited about this. Guys, I'm looking forward to this. So everyone, have a great, great rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. As I always used to say, and I'm going to say it again, don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to all them all. And take action, everybody.